When soldiers got together for a group photo in 1903, they never imagined scientists would study their faces a century later. What these researchers discovered when examining this picture surprised history experts, changing our understanding of military photography. The heavy wooden door of the GMA History Museum squeaked open as Emily Parker rushed in, carrying a large cardboard box. Water dripped from her coat onto the polished floor as she set down her precious package. "I found it," she called out, her voice echoing through the empty exhibition hall. The original Sex Regiment photo was in the basement storage all this time. The museum director hurried over, shocked. For months, they had been preparing for an exhibition about the Imperial Guard, but the main attraction, a famous photo showing over 1,000 soldiers standing in formation, had been missing. Now, the morning before the exhibition opened, Emily had unexpectedly found it in an old storage room. With trembling hands, they carefully removed the photo from its protective covering. Even after more than a century, the image was remarkably clear. 1,250 guards arranged in 25 neat rows, each a face distinct and easily identifiable despite the enormous size of the group. "This can't be real," the director whispered, adjusting his glasses. Cameras in 1903 weren't this good. Emily looked closer, examining the soldiers' faces. "Look how clear everything is. You can even see." She paused, peering at the front of the image. "Are those cigarette butts in the grass?" The director pulled out a magnifying glass from his desk drawer and verified what Emily noticed. There, scattered among the blades of grass in front of the first row of soldiers, were tiny cigarette ends, perfectly captured by a camera that, according to history, shouldn't have been able to show such small details. "We need to get this digitized immediately," the director said, already reaching for his phone. "There's something unusual about this photo." They didn't realize that this discovery would begin a research project that would astonish historians and photography experts worldwide. The soldiers who had posed for this group photo in 1903 had left behind a mystery that would only be solved 100 years later. 3 days later, the museum's small digital lab was bustling. Ryan Thompson, a young scanning technician, had been working non-stop to scan the massive old photo. The negative was enormous, 110 by 60 centimeters, much bigger than most early 20th century photographs. "This is amazing," Ryan said, pointing to his computer screen where he had zoomed in on a section of the image. "I can see individual buttons on their uniforms, the medals, even the expressions on their faces. This kind of detail shouldn't be possible with 100-year-old technology." Emily nodded, equally surprised. "Can we find out anything about how this photo was taken?" "Only what's written on the back," Ryan answered, carefully flipping over the original. "It says it was taken in 1903, showing all members of the Sexhole Lifeguards Regiment. The negative size is noted, but there's no information about the camera or photographer." News of the remarkable photo spread beyond the museum. Within weeks, researchers from Moscow, Berlin, and London arrived, eager to examine it. Dr. Michael Harrington, a leading expert in historical photography from Moscow University, headed the team. As he studied the image, he frowned. "You understand why this is unusual, right?" he asked Emily. In 1903, cameras were simple. Most glass plate negatives were small, and lenses weren't sharp enough to capture such a large group with this much detail. It should have been impossible. Yet the evidence was right in front of them. As the team set up their advanced digital equipment to analyze every inch of the photo, their skepticism turned to excitement. Not only was every face clearly visible, but they could also see every detail that should have been lost due to the limitations of early 20th century photography. "Look at this soldier here," said Dr. Sarah Williams, the imaging specialist from London. She pointed to a man in the middle rows whose cheeks appeared slightly puffed out. "It's almost like he's holding his breath." The mystery deepened when an elderly visitor to the museum recognized that soldier. Walter Bennett, a 78-year-old local resident, had come to see the exhibition after reading about it in the newspaper. When he saw the famous photo, he immediately asked to speak with the researchers. "My grandfather is in that picture," he told them, his eyes shining with excitement. "His name was Francis Kendall. He used to tell me stories about the day this photo was taken." The research team gathered around Walter, keen to hear first-hand accounts that might solve the mystery of the impossible photo. "According to my grandfather," Walter began, "this photo was taken when the regiment commander retired. They spent a whole day preparing for the photography. My grandfather even lit a cigarette while standing on the scaffolding, and when the order came he held the cigarette in his fist but didn't have time to release the smoke. That's why his cheeks are puffed out in the photo." Dr. Harrington looked back at the image on the screen, zooming in on Francis Kendall's face. The story matched perfectly with what they were seeing. A young soldier with his cheeks noticeably puffed out, as if holding his breath. "Did your grandfather ever mention the camera they used?" Dr. Williams asked. Walter thought for a moment, his wrinkled face crinkling in concentration. "He said they built tall scaffolding for the photographer. The camera was enormous. He described it as being as big as a small car, with a lens like a dinner plate." This new information excited the research team. A camera with such a large lens in 1903 would have been a major breakthrough. "There's more," Walter added. "My grandfather mentioned that they spent hours positioning every soldier. The photographer was incredibly fussy, obsessing over every detail. Some of the men joked that he was stricter than their commanding officers." As the researchers continued their investigation, they made another surprising discovery. When examining the background of the photo beyond the rows of soldiers, they noticed what appeared to be measuring equipment. "This is interesting," Dr. Harrington murmured, enhancing the image further. "Why would there be measuring equipment at a regimental photo?" The question led them down a new path of research. Searching through historical archives, they found scattered references to a secret optical research division within the Imperial Russian military, one that had been developing advanced photography equipment for spying purposes. "What if the regimental photo was a cover?" suggested Dr. Thomas Weber, the historian from Berlin. "What if the real purpose was to test new military technology for aerial spying?" The theory gained support when they found a brief mention in a military journal from 1904 of experimental optical equipment being tested at the Kexholm Regiment headquarters. The journal entry was unclear, but it matched exactly with the timing of the photo. Meanwhile, Emily had become interested in the soldiers themselves. Using the amazing detail of the photo, she began identifying individual soldiers and tracking their life stories through military records. The Sexhole Lifeguards Regiment had a proud history. According to the caption, which they found beneath a copy of the photo in another museum, the Lifeguards Key Regiment of the Austrian Emperor was created in 1710 by Emperor Peter I. Since its beginning, the regiment had fought in 20 wars, spent 50 years in them, and visited Sweden, Persia, Turkey, Germany, Denmark, England, Portugal, Greece, Austria, Switzerland, Romania, and Bulgaria. The caption went on, listing the regiment's many honors. For his service, he has insignia: 2 silver trumpets for the capture of Germany in 1760, the grenadier rank for distinction in 1873, 1812. Insignia on caps for distinction for the battle at Mountains Airy in 1814. Double buttonholes on uniforms in 1815. Transferred to the Guards Corps in 1831. ribbons on banners for 100 years of service in 1838 for St. George, banners for the war in 1878, named lifeguards and St. Andrew's stars on hats in 1894. With Walter's help, Emily contacted the descendants of several other soldiers in the photo. Each family had their own stories passed down through generations about the day the entire regiment posed together. One family shared letters from their great-grandfather describing how the photographer had spent hours organizing the regiment, requiring complete stillness for the perfect shot. Another brought in a pocket watch their ancestor had received as a gift that day, visible in his hand in the photo when they zoomed in close enough. The most moving story came from an elderly woman named Catherine, who recognized her grandfather in the front row. "He always said it was the proudest day of his life," she told Emily, tears welling in her eyes. Not because of the photo, but because it was the day he was promoted for brave acts. When they zoomed in on her grandfather's uniform, they could indeed see the newly pinned medal that hadn't yet appeared in the regiment's official records, further proof of the photo's remarkable historical value. As word of these discoveries spread, the GMO Museum saw an unprecedented rise in visitors. People traveled from across the country and beyond to see this remarkable photo and learn about the soldiers who had posed together over a century ago. A few months into their research, the team decided to examine the edges of the photo more carefully. These areas had previously been ignored because they seemed less important. But in one corner, partly hidden by a tent flap, they saw something that changed everything they thought they knew about early 1900s technology. When they zoomed in, they spotted what looked like a second camera that seemed far too advanced for its time. It had a massive lens, about a meter wide, attached to a detailed framework that allowed for precise adjustments. "This could explain everything," Dr. Williams whispered, staring at the screen. "A lens that size, if properly made, could indeed capture this level of detail." Dr. Harrington nodded slowly. But such technology wasn't supposed to exist in 1903. This camera is decades ahead of its time. Their discovery excited photography historians and experts. How could someone in 1903 have built such an advanced camera? And why was it never recorded in history? Further research found references to a Russian optical engineer named Nicholas Wells. In the early 1900s, he designed cutting-edge lenses for the military. His work was considered revolutionary, but most of it was lost during the Russian Revolution. It seems the Sex Home Regiment photo wasn't just a celebration. Dr. Volkov explained at a press conference announcing their findings. It was a demonstration of cutting-edge military technology. A camera with a lens nearly 1 meter in diameter, capable of capturing details that would be invaluable for spying. The theory gained further support when they discovered that the photo had been taken just months before the start of the Russo-Japanese War. The Russian military would have needed better spying technology, and using a regimental photo shoot as a cover was a clever way to test it. What's truly remarkable, Dr. Williams added, is that this technology was so advanced that it wouldn't become standard in photography for decades. The Russian Revolution and later wars must have destroyed the research facility and scattered its innovations. For Emily, however, the human side of the story was just as important. Because the photo was so detailed, she was able to identify more than 200 soldiers and connect their descendants with images of their ancestors for the first time. "This photo is a bridge through time," she told a journalist covering the story. "It's not just a historical artifact, it's a way for people to connect with their family history." The most emotional moment came when Walter brought his entire family to the museum to see his grandfather's face, clear and detailed, frozen in that moment, with his cheeks puffed full of cigarette smoke. 4 generations of the family stood before the photo, amazed at the connection across time. "He would have never believed this," Walter said, his voice thick with emotion, "that over 100 years later, his great-great-grandchildren would be looking at his face, seeing him exactly as he was on that day." The researchers also found another similar photo in the Rivne Museum's collections. That image showed the lifeguards of St. Petersburg of King Frederick William III Regiment, taken in the same location as the famous Lifeguards Kiex Regiment photo. This discovery suggested that the advanced camera had been used multiple times, further supporting the theory that it was part of a planned military technology development program. The Rivne photo, measuring 44 by 98 centimeters, showed the same extraordinary level of detail. After scanning with a resolution of 800 dpi, cigarette butts were clearly visible in the grass in the foreground, just as in the Kexholm Regiment photo. Rumors even spread that the camera still existed and was preserved in a military museum in Russia. The team found a blurry old photo of what might have been the mysterious camera, but they couldn't confirm if it was real. As the researchers published their findings in major academic journals, the Kexholm Regiment photo became world famous. People started calling it the impossible photo, a forgotten piece of history, rediscovered when researchers zoomed in and saw something no one expected. The Gomel Museum was forever changed by the discovery. What had once been a quiet local institution became an international destination. The museum expanded, creating a special exhibition hall dedicated entirely to the photo and the stories of the soldiers it contained. The photo continued to yield new discoveries. Historians were able to reconstruct the fates of many officers shown in it. Many of them went through impressive military careers, leaving a notable mark on history. The regiment itself had an illustrious history, having fought in 20 wars and traveled throughout Europe and across several seas. Did you like this story? Have you considered what untold stories might be hidden in your family's vintage photographs? Share your thoughts in the comment section. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to our channel and hit the like button. A single photograph sometimes has the power to bridge generational gaps and uncover secrets that time attempted to conceal. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in our next video. Have a wonderful day.